Hey, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, my brothers and sisters. How are you doing? My name is Gene Tagaban, and I'm going to be filling in for Jillian and Will. Um, I hope that you can hear me okay out there. And if you can, please, somebody drop me a note here. Right on, Jillian, just joined. Cool.
You're on.
All right. I was just saying, it's about 20 minutes ago. I was on my bike, and then Jillian gave me a call, and they couldn't get on. So here I am.
You owe me.
So cool. And then I was having issues with my iPad, and I just couldn't even get on my iPad. And so I had to like get the laptop out and start doing that.
Save the day.
And so my wife, she's over here, just she's saying I owe her, and I just totally saved the day, which is true because she does it so many times. So welcome, 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 Native Waters. Hang on, just one second. Got to get my drum.
You want Martin?
What's that?
You want Martin?
No,
Cowboys and Indians on a drum?
no. Okay, hey, I'm back. So I figured I'll just share a few stories and talk to do some talk stories, play a little bit of music here, and to see how things go. And so as before we get started here, I'm actually going to light this smudge here, and maybe I'll talk about what I'll talk about is one of these things I call it the tools of the spirit, eh? Tools of the spirit, because everything that we have around us are these tools. Even this here sage, this is things that we use. So I'm going to light this here smudge. And what I'm doing right now, and this is just for me. You can join me. You can join me as well. But I'm just lighting the smudge because I need to get myself here. I need to get myself centered and focused on what I'm about to do here. Yeah, because like I said, I was like 20 minutes ago. I was riding. I'm a bike rider. I was speeding through a park and riding my bike, and then I got a call, and so to go on, and so here I am. So part of me is still not caught up with me. Part of me is still, even my mind isn't even caught up with me about being here and what I'm about to do here. And so I just need to center myself. And so I'm going to burn a little smudge. I'm probably going to sing a little song here too, just to help me get here. So a little virtual smudge out there for everybody as I take a time just to breathe, just take a breath. So, so as I start this here, I'm just going to ask you, and as you're watching, maybe you're just sitting at your desk and off in the distance you're listening. I'm going to ask you as I sing the song just to think about your ancestors. Think about the land of your ancestors, about what it looked like, what the animals looked like, what the foods the people ate, how they spoke. Were there mountains? Were there trees? Was it the ocean or the rivers? Was it the plains? What were the sounds that your ancestors heard? You see, I love listening to the waves on the ocean, the gentle waves, because those are the sounds my ancestors listened to. I was riding my bike earlier, and as I was riding my bike, I heard that call of the eagle up in the tree. And I imagined it, seeing that eagle up in the tree. I imagined seeing it, singing. You see, my ancestors heard that music. And the gentle breeze through the leaves in the tree. Yeah, I love that. And so as I sing this song, I just want to have you just think about the ancestors. What is it that they experienced? Those sounds, those smells. that you can still experience today. What were those things? The call of the coyote, the song of the raven, and the buzz of the wings from the hummingbird. And during the wintertime, the silence of the snowfall, those big snowflakes, how everything just gets quiet, quiet, quiet. I love that experience. So just think about those things as I sing this song. Oh, that helped. Thank you so much. Thank you for bearing with me as I sing my song. My name is Gene Tagaban. My trinket name is Gayal. I'm of the Duckdane Ton, the Raven Freshwater Sockeye clan from Hoona, Alaska. I'm the child of a Wishkatan Eagle Shark clan from Juan in Juneau, Alaska. I'm Cherokee, Tlingit, and Filipino. And that's a little bit of who I am. And just to know who you are as a human being, And earlier I said about talk about those tools of the spirit. One of these tools that I have right here is my drum. It's my drum, and it's a tool that I use to sing, but it helps my spirit as well. Helps my spirit. And some of these stories that I have, when I go out there, I live right next to this beautiful park, and there's old growth cedars and cottonwoods, and they're just huge, huge trees, and those there's maples in there, and it's just there's these old trees. And sometimes I'll be riding my bike, I'll be hiking through there, and then suddenly I'll just take notice that a tree will just pop out, and I'll just take notice to that. And to me, it's as if that tree is calling out to me. And I love that, and just paying attention to me. And it's those things in our lives, just that your spirit is talking to you. Your spirit is talking to you, and to pay attention to those things. I was in a conversation just last week with an uncle of mine, and I consider him an uncle, Indian way, Native way. And we're talking about these things, how when you're driving down the road, and there's suddenly, how many of you have been driving down the road and then you see a hawk? You see this hawk flying, and then it lands maybe on a light post, or maybe it lands on a tree. I love it when those hawks, they just hover. They hover, and then they just they'll see a mouse or maybe a little snake, whatever it is, and then they'll just dive down, and then they'll get whatever it is, or they'll miss. But I love that. And we're talking about that, how those our spirit talks to us in so many ways, other than just with words. Oftentimes it just talks to us through those symbols. When I see that hawk, I think to myself, what am I thinking? What am I thinking right at that moment? Right at that moment when I see that hawk. And oftentimes in those moments too, I'll be thinking about, am I making the right decision? Am I making the right choice? Should I talk about this, or maybe I shouldn't talk about these things? And learning a new song or whatever it is. It's like something right at that moment, and I see these things. Or sometimes a hummingbird will come. I love that sound. I love that sound of that hummingbird. How many of you have been out there and you're in the garden or out there in the yard, maybe in the park, and you're just in your front yard and you hear that, and you think it's a bee, but it's actually those hummingbirds zooming back and forth. I used to be a tree planter, and that was one of my favorite jobs, the work. Not only was it physically hard, but mentally and spiritually, it was very satisfying, and emotionally as well. But out there planting these trees and blessing each and every one of those trees. And as I was planted thousands of acres out there in Southeast Alaska, all through the Louisiana, Mississippi, Georgia, Arkansas, Tennessee, up in those areas too. Just spent my life just as a tree planter, planting these trees. But it was in Southeast Alaska where all these hummingbirds, you hear them. But to me, I love that. And then I took that orange tagging tape, and I wrapped it around my hat. And they came closer and closer and closer. So I had an idea. I took all these wildflowers as I was planting my trees out there on the sides of these mountains in Southeast Alaska. And I made this here little hat with all these wildflowers, and I covered my head. And it was cool because at lunchtime I'd be sitting there and just waiting, and often you just spend time with yourself. And that's one thing I loved as a tree planter out there. It's like, and not everyone could do that. Like nowadays, what's going on with the people? We have to spend some time in isolation, time with ourselves. And we have a hard time spending that time with ourselves. It's one of those things that it's like, I have to spend 24/7 for the rest of my life with myself. So get to know who you are. Get to know that person you have to spend that time with. You. And that's what I loved about planting the trees, because oftentimes you couldn't just bring anybody out there. Those who could spend time with themselves. Yes. But oftentimes it's those macho guys who just couldn't, they had a hard time. I loved it. I loved it. Learned a lot about myself. So I made this here hummingbird hat with all these wildflowers. And at lunchtime, I'd just sit there. I just sat there, and the hummingbirds flying by. And then they'd just stop and hover. Hover. Hover some more. Just right around me. And it was like so cool. And I just sat there, just quiet, silent, still. And then I grabbed another branch, and I held this branch right up in front of me, right there in front of me. And this little hummingbird, went and landed on the branch right in front of me. And I'm just sitting there looking at this. I think I was probably around 21, 22 at the time. And I'm out there and just watching this hummingbird. Then slowly I would just lift my finger. And when you're out there too, you got to pay attention to the wind. How is everything moving? If it's a little breezy, you move with the breeze. You move that branch. So I started moving my hand. With the cadence of what is going on out there in the woods. So I'm moving my hand, swaying, waiting for the breeze to blow or not, just gently moving it. And then I put my finger right up there by the hummingbird, right behind it, and slowly dropped the branch and held my finger there. And then I had that little hummingbird on that finger. that little hummingbird on my finger. And here I'm just like this, like 21, 22-year-old young man, still early learning in my life, in awe, in awe of this little creature, this little hummingbird, looking at the colors, just barely had my eyes just closed. I didn't want to move too fast again. And then suddenly it just took off. What are some of those experiences that you always remember? What are those experiences you always remember? And so I was like thinking about these things and signs and symbols and communication that comes from spirit so often, so often. My grandma used to tell me that the hummingbirds were really little fairies that would watch after us. That's why I'm always looking for those hummingbirds too. They're just confirmation of where I'm at and confirmation of ancestors for me too. And that's a belief system that I carry with me. And belief systems and values are really, really, really important. You know, what do you believe in? They will dictate on how you, on like almost every action that you take in your life, your belief systems and values. And so I love seeing the hummingbirds. Love them. Yeah. You know, and again, it's like I'll be driving down the road, and then suddenly I'll like see an eagle, and suddenly maybe sometimes I'm walking in the woods, and I'll see those little chickadees. One of my favorite birds are those chickadees. It's not always the birds of prey. Sure, I love the osprey. I love the eagles. I love the red-tailed hawks. One of my favoriteest hawk are um those small hawks. I can't remember the name of it right now. It's just leaving my mind right now. But those small they're great hunters, man. Coopers, those little Cooper's hawks, man. Those are the hunters, just like the weasels. But those hawks, they're the hunters, and keep an eye out for them. They'll keep an eye out for them, but it's hard to see them. They remind me of Toothless on How to Train Your Dragon. One of my favoriteest movies. I love watching How to Train Your Dragon. You know, wouldn't it be cool? Again, my imagination gets crazy just to be riding on the back of a dragon. That'd be awesome. That would be awesome. But sometimes when I'm walking through the woods, one of the creatures that really catches my attention, because I hold this creature in awe, is the chickadee. The little chickadee. Those birds are just durable and tough. And they're warriors, little warriors. It's one of those things, man. You could be in the middle of a storm and the wind is blowing, snow is scattering, snow drifts are piling up, and it's just cold outside, and you would be inside because you don't want to be outside because you don't, it's like, it's too cold out there, and you would surely just start shivering and feeling that. But then if you look closely in the branches, you'll see the chickadee. That little chickadees out there flying around, jumping on the branches, like just going back and forth, looking for little nuts, little pine needles or whatever to eat, and just like flying around out there. And then that chickadee will be out there flying, and it'll look at you through the window, and it'll see you, and it's out there just flying. And I can swear to you that chickadee is looking at me this one time, and it looked at me and just said, "Man, that guy is a wimp." And I wonder sometimes, it's like, now, who has the most power? You see, I could take that little chickadee and so easily take it, and I could take it in my hand and crush it and end its life. But then if I went out there into the woods and the places where it lives and thrives, I would have a difficult time, or maybe even perish. Depends on the time of year. And it would be thriving. So oftentimes I wonder who has the most strength? Me or that little chickadee? Tell you what, those chickadees are awesome. Awesome. Strong, strong, strong. So I'm always looking out for those chickadees. They're good communicators, tough. And oftentimes we're just gonna chat here. Oftentimes, I'll be out there in the woods. I grew up in Juneau, Alaska, southeast Alaska, and I grew up fishing out there. And there was this one time, my brother and I, we went out there fishing for dolly vardens off the beach, and it was awesome. It was a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful spring day. And I tell you what, when the sun is shining in southeast Alaska, and there's that warmth there, it's the most beautiful place on this earth. Most beautiful place on this earth. And there was one day, my brother's only like 3 years younger than I am. Oftentimes people have mistaken us for twins when we were growing up. It was one of those things that's really interesting. It's like when we were growing up, in high school and stuff, girls would come up to me and they would think I was my brother. Hey Al, how you doing? And I'd say, hey, you want to go to a movie something later on tonight or something? They say, yeah, let's go to a movie. And I'd go home. Hey Al, you got a date tonight. You got to take so and so to a movie. He said, what? You did? What did you do? And so then he'd go out and set up dates for me, vice versa. But we'd always play tricks on each other. But it was one time we were out there fishing for dollies out there out of Auk Bay. Ajuan, the people of Ajuan. And so we're casting in the water. And every cast, we'd catch one. And we're just having a good old time, catch and release, because you catch one. I mean, we could have limited it out within 30 minutes, but we're just out there having a good time. Brothers in our shorts, sunglasses on, t-shirts, just having a good time. And then it was like, this tourist, man, in Alaska, Juneau, Alaska, it's just full of tourists, and it's like these reporters want to report on this new world, of tourists. But I don't mind them going there, because they're seeing. It was my uncle, a teacher of mine. It's like, I love to see our land through the eyes of a visitor. That appreciation. Appreciate your land. Because when I was younger, growing up in Juneau, Alaska, through junior high, high school, I got to see a glacier every day. I saw a glacier every day. I saw beautiful mountains, mountain ranges all around me every day. Water, oceans, animals, every day. The thing is, when I was in high school, junior high school, I couldn't wait to get out. I couldn't wait to get away from that place. But then as I grew, I can't wait to get back, especially now. I'd love to get back there and see my family, see my folks, my parents, just to give them a hug, eat some good food, hang out with my folks, my parents. And when they nap, we all nap. I love that. But growing up there in Juneau, Alaska, tourists from all over the world would come there to see it. And so this one character, he came down to the beach. He had his hip boots on, and he had his fishing vest on, all these hooks, lures, and everything. He had his fishing hat on, more hooks and lures on his fishing hat. He carried about 3 or 4 different fishing poles, and he had this huge tackle box. And he set it down. Then he looked at us, And my brother was just, and we're in our shorts, we're in our flip flops, sunglasses, t-shirt, and we're just out there casting, catching a dolly, every cast. And he just kind of looks at us and puts his nose up, as if he's looking at us like amateurs. Because he had all this stuff, man. He had all this stuff, and with all the stuff that made him a professional, he knew what he was doing. And so he started casting out there in the water. 10 minutes later, oh, I didn't catch anything. Took another pole, cast it in the water. Didn't catch anything. Took another one, cast it in the water. Opened up his tackle box. And it was one of those tackle boxes when you open it up, it goes just like, and all these hooks and these lures and everything is in there. And he's watching my brother and I. We had one lure apiece, catching a fish every cast, releasing, catching, releasing, catching, releasing, having a good time, kind of laughing at this guy too. It's like, look at this guy, has all his stuff. And so we caught a couple, kept them, started walking up the beach. And as we're walking up the beach, he yells at us, "Hey, you guys from here?" I go, "Yeah, we're from here." And he goes, "Man, how is it that you're catching a fish every cast?" And I go, "Well, we live here. We know this land. We know this area." And he goes, give me a hint, man. I'm from Georgia or Tennessee or North Carolina or wherever he was from. I don't know. I can't remember. And I opened up his tackle box. I looked in his tackle box. I looked on his vest with all those lures. I looked on his hat with all those lures. And I looked around. I said, none of these things are going to help you catch fish in these waters. So I took the lure off my pole, cut it, said, "Here, use that. That will help you." And then we walked away. But seeing the land of our ancestors through the eyes of a visitor. Yeah, I love fishing with my brother. I grew up there. And there was one time we were going fishing. And it was a time, I remember growing up, and there are toads everywhere. Toads. There's no toads. And there's a time in the year, in the springtime, and I do it like this is because what I'm seeing is that as you're walking down the trail, this one time my brother and I were walking to this here fishing, to go fishing. And the trail was covered with thousands and thousands of tiny, tiny little toads, thousands, all on the trails. And in order to get down and pass the trail to the beach where we wanted to go fishing, you had to walk and step on the toads. There's that many. And the ground was just moving with all those toads on there. And as soon as we stepped and we lifted up our foot, more would just cover the area where there's all those smashed ones were. And we were making it down to the area, but there were so many toads. And I remember growing up in Juneau that there's so many frogs, we called them, but they were toads. But they're all over the place. It's interesting. Now that I go back, I don't see them anymore. And so, yeah, it's interesting. You'll go to certain areas, you'll find them there, but those areas where there used to be thousands, you can hardly see them anymore. So I went to the end of the beach there, and we're sitting there. As we're sitting there, we're just sitting there just watching, looking. As we're sitting there watching, we're at the point of this little island. This little island of trees. And come around, hundreds of swallows is their time of nesting. And they're like flying back and forth, darting back and forth. My brother and I were just like sitting there just going, oh my goodness. We're like kind of almost like dodging because we thought we were going to get hit by these here swallows. And so I said, hey, bro, check this out. And so I stuck my hand out, straight out. And it was cool because as I stuck my hand straight out, the swallows, they were like right over it or right under it. And you could feel it on my skin. And we just stood there. And then we just stood up right in the middle of all these swallows and just stood there like this, as if we were a stump or a tree. And these swallows going back and forth. And we'd even move a little bit. And they'd adjust in the air. And this is what we did in Juneau, Alaska. We grew up playing and doing these things. I loved it. And that really helped our spirit. You see, my brother and I, we growing up there in Juneau, Southeast Alaska, we were out the road a little bit. And I remember when we first moved out there, I didn't know anybody, and plus there was only like one other house around us. So my brother and I, he was my best friend. You know, little brothers. You don't want them to be your best friend, but if they're the only ones around to play with, they become your best friend. It's either that or the frogs. And sometimes the frogs were a better choice than my little brother. But sometimes we just go up, and growing up in Southeast Alaska, in Southeast Alaska, and the salmon runs. Now, if you've ever seen the salmon runs, man, up there, it's as if they're so thick growing up that you could walk on their backs across the river. You can walk on their backs across the river. Gosh, I love that. I miss that too. But my brother and I, we'd like go check it out. And as kids, we would go, you're not supposed to, but we'd go there and chase the salmon up the rivers. And it was just one time, I think I was in my 40s. He was just getting into his 40s. But we were these grown men. And I was up there in Juneau, and we decided to ride our bikes out there to the glacier. Riding our bikes out there to the river where we used to fish, where the salmon used to run, where they still do. But we're riding our mountain bikes out there, and then we're looking at the side, and we're like just having a great time, you know, riding those trails, remembering growing up there together, remembering when we were like kids, little kids, teenage or in junior high. We would push our bikes up the trail next to the glacier. We'd push them up the trails because you can ride them, and then we'd ride them down these trails. But it was this one time as two grown adults, my brother and I, and we're riding, and then we ride down. And then my brother, we stopped. We stopped at one of the streams, and there's a big salmon hole right there, and there's thousands of salmon in there. And we're just looking at all these salmon down there. And then we looked at each other. And we just say, without saying a word, we both just jumped into that water. And just like we were like little kids, we're just chasing the salmon back and forth, up the stream, down the stream, you know, trying to catch these salmon. I chase him up to him as he's trying to catch these salmon. And we're just sitting there and just having a great old time. You know, again, we're in our 40s and grown men just reminiscing about when we were kids, you know, just playing, having a good time. And then as we're just in the stream, you know, this is early in the morning, and then we're in the stream, we happen to look up, and then there's this black bear. It's just like sitting there on the rock, just watching us like this, you know. And we're like just this, as we're watching the black bear watching us like this, we're like, oh man, come on in, brother, why don't you join us, you know. And yeah, those times, those stories of growing up. This is those good time stories, man. Being out there in the woods, being out there in nature, connected with nature. You know, I saw my sister Thea talking about advocating for planting trees. I love our trees. I was talking to an elder, and as we were talking, he started talking about higher intelligence, outer space, life elsewhere. And he asked me if I believed in that. And I said, yeah, I do. I believe in that. I also believe in Bigfoot. Yeah. Yeah. I got stories about that. Maybe I'll share that another time. But as I was sitting there talking with my elder, he started talking about, you know what? If back in the day, let's say like 200 years ago, even 300 years ago, and a spaceship came down and hovered, and then they traveled around the Earth and took a look, and then they went back to their own people and wrote a report or gave a report. And he was telling me about how he says he's going that the dominant species on this planet, would have been the trees. You see, the dominant species on this planet, the trees, which gives life, provides oxygen for everything else, provides a home, provides a food for those on this earth. The dominant species, trees, the plant life. And they also talked about how that it also had a parasite that lived amongst them. There was other life, but there was a parasite. That parasite, he talked about how that parasite would have been the human beings. And they are slowly invading this earth. And what would they end it? Then he started talking about how what would those aliens, or what would that higher intelligent life form, what would they have said if they came back like now, and compared it to like a bacteria, humans being a bacteria. And then he started talking about like, how in our digestive system that there's good bacteria and bad bacteria, and that we have a choice to be a good bacteria or an invasive bacteria that causes illness. But it's interesting. It was interesting listening to him speak about how the trees would have been and are the higher life form back then. And I've had other uncles who've told me that if you want to remember, the trees hold the remembering. You see, we can't cut the trees down, because if we cut the trees down, then we'll lose the remembering. They hold the remembering, and they go deep into the earth and through all the root systems of all the plant lives. There's a communication going on, and they're talking amongst each other, and they hold the remembering. And there's the youth and the elder trees as well. I love listening to those elders talk and speak about things like that. And those things, yeah. And also, I was reading a book as well, and the book was of how he talked about how that if an alien life form came here, and how us as human beings, we just get caught up in our own thoughts and making up things up, and then our fears, we start to spew it out on everything. That if a higher life form came down here on Earth, and they would make these here films on like aliens destroying the earth, wanting to take over the earth, killing people and societies and this and that. But then But he talked about how that if a higher life form had the intelligence to come here from another place, that higher intelligence would not allow them to cause harm, but to love, but to love. And those lower life forms they don't hold the intelligence. Those lower life forms that cause harm, hurt, pain, death, want to take over, that those life forms don't have the intelligence to travel to other planets, other worlds. I love thinking about that. I love that. And I started all this by just talking about walking out there in the woods. You see, I love walking in the woods amongst the trees because I love walking amongst the dominant species of this planet, the trees. I love walking them in the woods amongst the higher intelligent of life forms, the animals, the land, the trees themselves. They hold an intelligence that's beyond our comprehension. Now, our ancestors knew this intelligence. Our ancestors were so connected, they knew this intelligence. We can still have it. We still have it if we just take time to listen. If we take time to listen. Yeah. It's interesting. I got another story for you. And this story, again, it's a experience, another experience I had. And it was this one time I was in Colorado, and I was going to school. I was going to school out of um, Winter Park, Colorado. And I was there in Winter Park, Colorado, and I was just in class all day long, and my brain was just about frazzled. And I was just going, "Oh man, I just need a break here." And it was a beautiful setting, but I just needed just to get out some uh, just some frustration, some binded up energy. I just needed to get that out. So I jumped on my mountain bike, and it was late in the day, and I knew I had to get up there and get back down before it got dark. So I just started riding up the mountain, riding up those Colorado mountains, and that air is thin, and you got to get acclimated to it. I remember when I first go there, every time it's as if my lungs were about to explode, because I couldn't get enough air and I just had no energy. But after a while in those mountains, you just can't help but just like get rejuvenated, and you just get just air, and you just like boom, just get up those mountains. So I was climbing those mountains with my mountain bike and just getting up there to the top. As I got up to this here one little crest, I got out of the trees. I was past the tree line. And so I started rising up right over this crest. And I don't know why, something told me. Again, Spirit talks to you in different ways. Something told me, set the bike down and walk. And so I set my bike down and crested over this here grassy knoll. And as I crested over this grassy knoll, just on the other side, there was a marmot or groundhog. This marmot was just sitting there. And just sitting there. If you've ever seen those marmots and what they look like. But this one here was just sitting there. And it was watching the sun go down. How did I know that? I don't know. There's just a part of me that just knew that. And so as that sun was going down, that marmot was just sitting there. So slowly I walked closer. Slowly I walked closer. And this marmot just looked at me. And it's as if he could sense my spirit or sense something about me that I was no harm. And so I just looked back at the sunset. And so I got within 4 feet of that marmot. And I just sat there with that marmot. And together we watched the sunset in the mountains of Colorado. And it was at that moment I knew, as I sat there watching the sunset with this marmot, I knew I was in the presence of an elder. I knew I was in the presence of a being that has lived a life and has many stories and wisdom to share. As I sat on that mountain with that marmot. I had to leave because the sun was starting to go down. The sun was just going down. And in the woods, it gets really dark fast. And I was on my bike, so I had to get down fast before it got too dark. And I would get hurt. So as I got up slowly, I started walking away from my elder, that marmot. He didn't move. He didn't move. And I just turned around and I just said, "Thank you, grandfather. Thank you for allowing me to sit with you. Thank you for allowing me to sit with you." And then I rode my bike down off that mountain. And my whole being, my whole spirit, everything was just calm. Was calm. But taking that time, just taking that time, even if you're in a city, not around the woods too much, maybe there's a park, but if you're in a city, even if there's a tree around, go sit next to the tree, just to be in the tree and connect with it somehow. I know there's a lot of people say, "Oh, you're a tree hugger, this and that." I am a tree hugger. I go out there. You can ask my wife. I'll go out there and I'll hug a tree or several trees. I am a tree hugger. They're a higher intelligence. They hold not a higher vibration, but a more intense, deeper vibration. It's that same vibration that you will sense when you're in the presence of a humpback whale. When you're around those big trees, those old trees, and you're around those humpbacks, those whales, it's a similar feeling. It's a similar vibration. And that's really interesting because down in New Zealand, the Maori people, they talk about, they did a study, and there's similar DNA between their old trees and whales. I know, blows you away. But if you're around those old trees and then you get around those whales, they hold that deep vibration. And if you take time, you can feel it. But you have to take time. You have to take time. I'm going to share a little breath with you right now. Yeah. Just imagine you're around those trees, man. You're walking through the woods. I know I'm running out of time here. It's like my uncle said, it's like sometimes time just goes real fast by you. Sometimes it goes by you real slow. Either way, time's just always moving by. Oh, so make the most of your time. Yeah. To those old elders, man, time. It's as if they were like time travelers themselves. Yeah. So I'd like to close out with this here story real quick. And so is my I had a teacher of mine, a mentor. His name is Chris. And so Chris, he would so one time I went into the longhouse there in Saxman, the Beaver House. And there was Chris. He was just standing there like, I go, Chris, what are you doing? Because I'm being a bear. I'm being a bear. Oh, that's good. Then an hour later, I find him in the lodge again. He's doing this thing. I go, Chris, what are you doing? He goes, I'm being a frog. A frog. Oh, that's a good frog. Then later on, I see him. What are you doing, Chris? He says, I'm being a wolf. And then later on, I find him, he's like doing his hands are spread out, as if he's flying. And I go, you're being an eagle, aren't you? He goes, shh, I'm being a hawk. And so I asked him, so Chris, you're a bear, you're a frog, you're a wolf, you're a hawk. What are you doing? He goes, I'm asking a question. You see, if I want to find out something and I need an answer to it, I will step in to the spirit of another being and I will look down at myself and see what kind of answer I get. Now you go out there, and you do that. First thing you see, you be it, you be that being. Step into it and be it. I said, okay, I'll do that. And so I walked out of the longhouse. And I was like expecting to see an eagle or a raven or maybe a blue jay. Possibly a bear would walk by. But no, the first thing I saw was one of those little red squirrels. I was going, no, not a squirrel. I said, oh, okay, I'll go for it. And so I was like, looked around, made sure nobody else was watching me. Didn't want to lose cool points. And so I went. That was wild. Then a raven flew overhead. So I stepped in, became that raven, and looked down at myself. There was a tree, and I became the tree. And I looked at myself. I even became that blade of grass, looking up at myself. And I was like going, wow. Man, I thought about that all day. And it was interesting because that night, when I went to sleep, I had a dream. And it was in that dream that it's as if my spirit went up and became that hawk and looking down, flying over the world. Became that eagle looking down and flying over the world, flying over the land, flying over the mountains, looking at all the trees. And then as if my spirit went down and saw a bear, and as if my spirit just was running through the woods with that bear. And then, and it would go back and forth and just saw the deer. And the deer is considered the peacemaker amongst Ashlankic people. And my spirit became that of the deer. And then it flew back up, became a kingfisher. And it's as if that kingfisher, my spirit became the kingfisher, and went down, dove into the water. And my spirit became that of the salmon. And then that of the killer whale, of the sea lion. And then as suddenly it became that of a cloud. And my spirit was floating around in this dream as I missed the water. Then it started to rain. It started to rain. And many people get afraid of the rain, or they want to run from the rain. But you know, the rain is our ancestor. The rain is our ancestor, and it holds stories. And as this one raindrop came falling down back to the earth, I saw myself standing there in this dream. And as I was the raindrop falling, I saw myself standing down there. And as the raindrop, I fell right on my forehead. I fell right on my forehead, as if I blessed myself. And then so the next day I went to my uncle, or my teacher, Chris. I said, I did what you told me. I became a squirrel, a raven, a hawk. And then I had a dream. And then I had a dream. And I saw myself. And I saw myself. And all was well. And all was well. And all was well. Take care of yourself. You are a blessing. Sometimes it's okay to step out of yourself. Go be a tree. Go be an eagle. Go be a squirrel. Take a walk in the woods amongst those elders, deeper vibrations, higher intelligence. You'll be okay. We'll make it through this. We'll make it through this. So with that, I just want to say thank you for taking this time, allowing me to share some stories, share some words. As my dad says, some hot air. But mostly say or share some spirit. Take care of your spirit. Take care of your spirit. So with that, Gonachish, thank you. Thank you. And remember, one of the simplest prayers you could say is just to simply say, thank you. Thank you. Blessed. Until next time. I don't know how to do this. You know why? Because I want a laptop. I'm used to touching these things now to end it. And my wife, if she's watching me, then I need her up here to tell me how the heck do I log out of this now and save it. Anyways, we're done. Here we go. Technical difficulties again. My brothers and sisters, here we go. I guess I'm going to have to call her up, figure this out. Hey, Grace, Dwayne. I'm reading all these your text people over here now. All these people. Holy, look at all these people on here. I didn't even see them on here. Thank you, everybody, for coming on and just to come on and just to hang out. Miss you guys. Miss you guys. Right on. Okay, where's my wife? It's probably my wife calling right now. Oh, she's saying it is a touch screen. Okay, here we go. Let me try it. And in live video. All right. Be well. Okay.